Go. It's the Tiger Sports Live Breakdown Podcast.
Scott Baird here with Jigo, Brian Babcock for our third pod here, and we're deep in the playoffs, regional final, Lake High School. The site of the miracle against Genoa, where Cam Crew, connects on a 4th and long, and one of the greatest wins in Liberty Center modern history.
Yes, it was.
This week it's Milan Edison, who another Region 18 monster, 13-0. They play in the Sineski Bay Conference, one of those mega conferences that I think you're going to start seeing more and more of. Mm-hmm. 3 divisions, a big school division, kind of a middle school division, and a small school division. But this Milan Edison team is nasty group of people. I love the way they play, but I wanted to talk a little bit before we got into that about Oak Harbor, and because I was asked pre-pod and all day long. I bet you had 30 texts. What do you think? What do you think? Well, I think this is going to look a lot alike.
Yes,
because our offense is what it is, and it ain't gonna change. And I think what you're going to see from Edison looked a little bit like what Oak Harbor kind of wanted to do.
Right.
And they had a quarterback last week that could do some pretty dynamic things. This quarterback does some pretty dynamic things. So let's talk about Oak Harbor. And Casey Moeller played that chess game just perfectly. He goes up 10-7 at half. Oak Harbor comes back because they get the kickoff, and it just becomes field position and who has the possession of the ball when it matters, and then a senior. I thought the seniors were phenomenal.
Yeah.
Game of the year of the seniors. All the big plays made by seniors, but Liberty outgained them, but it was a war. 308 to 252 or something. Just slugfest. There wasn't any explosive stuff going on, but what were your takeaways from Oak Harbor?
Yeah, it was a little bit tighter than I even expected it to be, but I just think we talked a little bit about that pregame on the limited possessions in that game, because both teams were going to possess the football. There was going to be big drives.
Yes.
And it was going to be a limited possession game. So if one team could create a turnover or get a big play, a stop was going to be a huge difference. And ultimately, the 2 turnovers Liberty Center created were the difference in that game, because they both were within field goal range or real close.
Oh, yeah.
And that was at least 6 points that we took off the board with those 2 interceptions.
And they could kick. Oak Harbor could kick.
They could. So I think that ultimately was the difference. I was impressed with our offensive line. I mean,
oh, yeah.
They were the big dog winner last week.
Yeah,
and
as a unit, even the captain, Mark Blythe, who struggles to do unit awards because he hates to spend all that money on the nice shirts, but he had to cough up some dough for Nick Miller and the boys this week. And Todd Spangler and Brad Howe, they all went to work.
Fantastic.
I told you last week in the pod that Nick Miller's group and Nick had to be better, and he was.
Yeah, they
were. Incrementally each week, they were better.
They were. I mean, they just moved the ball all game long. And it wasn't our explosive plays that we're used to seeing where we're breaking 25, 30-yarders, but just 4, 3, 5, just all the way down the field. And I think that was really impressive.
Casey said today, this morning in our interview, he said, week 1 and 2, you're going to get explosives in the run game. But as you get down the tournament trail, those eliminate. The defenses are tighter. Oak Harbor, their bleeding tackler was their quarterback, Lalonde, who was their safety.
Yeah.
Talking about a guy, again, we always talk about that. You played safety. You played strong safety over tight ends, and you came downhill and filled run. He did that last week.
He did.
13 tackles, I think, or maybe 16.
Yeah,
they're quarterback.
Right.
And he was coming in like a missile. I mean, he was a bad dude.
Yep. Oh, he was making tackles at the line of scrimmage.
He was awesome.
It was 2-3 yards past the line of scrimmage.
I said, Casey, where is the boot? Where's the boot pass? He looked at me like, don't ask me that question. 24-21 win over Oak Harbor. I thought the pick there before half when they were in field goal range by Cammy was.
I think that was second half. I think they were both in the second half.
Yeah, it was early in the second half. They were driving.
They were.
And I don't understand. I think when you kept Lalonde in the pocket, he was not. He was short. He was better in half rolls.
He didn't see it as well.
Well, that was the end of the game pick as they were driving. By the way,
yes,
they were driving, and I'm not saying they were going to win, but it was pretty daunting as they went down the field. And Lalonde could run if he wanted.
Yes,
and he could throw if he wanted, and he kind of had that. And then I think the play before, the key to the Oak Harbor last drive, and we can move on to Edison because we've only got 3 hours, but actually 30 minutes, or the captain will fire me. But the idea being that drive looked pretty daunting because you knew they had quarterback run in their pocket.
I know. It was scary.
But the play that I thought they finally got some pressure from the defense. So Weimer gets some heat.
Yep.
And he didn't get him. Hard to get. Never got him. Hard to sack him. Wasn't going to happen. But I think he kind of put a little lick on him, and then he steps into a wave of dudes that, led by Waylon Rentz and Brogan and the guys, put a lick on him.
Yeah.
And I think that didn't feel great. Then he's got to sit in the pocket at 5'9", 5'10", over a big offensive and defensive lineman. And maybe he's not feeling 100, and he doesn't see Stephen Brogan, who gets under that route, and Brogan just ends the game. That was a fabulous play.
I'm not sure who was trailing that, but I think it was either Gary or Waylon, but they were right there as well.
Yeah, I mean,
so even if Stephen,
it
wasn't a great throw. I don't even know if it would have got the receiver, but whoever linebacker that was trailing that, they were on it as well. And I think they could have
the picky
made
through
the play
Cam
as well.
too. We watched that going into the smallest.
It was a throwaway. It was a throwaway.
I know, but man, there's a lot of Tigers in that.
Yeah,
glad we got it. But their best player who carried them all night long, because there was no inside run. Oak Harbor had no answer for our defensive line. Another Nick Miller special.
Yeah,
up front, Liberty Center, 24-21 over an undefeated Oak Harbor team. And, oh, by the way, Milan Edison comes in undefeated. They are 13-0 at a shootout last week against Eastwood. Now, they took early command of that game, but Eastwood, explosive passing game, got back into that game. It was a dandy last week. Milan Edison, a couple things to note before we start to talk about them. Number one, ranked computer points in Region 18, as I keep saying every week. Region 18 is loaded. Finished the AP poll in the number 4 spot, right behind Liberty in the 3rd spot. Head coach Jim Hall's been there 24 years, 160-100. They were SBC champs last year. They returned 4 of 5 offensive linemen. Looking at my notes here, three running backs and 2 wide receivers. And this quarterback, this Alex Hermes, I'm looking at some notes we took, but he can throw it.
Mm-hmm.
And they run an option. They ran more of a pure option in 23 because they won the SBC last year. They got beat by Coldwater 42-7, I think, in week 3. They were more option heavy last year. They still run option.
Yeah, it's dangerous.
Hermes is legit.
Mm-hmm.
Now, their quarterback last year was a star. He was there off 31 touchdowns, threw for 2,300 yards. Marcus Medina. But they've, in the collective, as Mike Tomlin might say, offensively, they are loaded to bear with returning players all over the map, returning 9 starters on offense and 8 on defense, only 1 underclassman, 1 sophomore on my scout. The rest of them are juniors and seniors. They've outscored their opponents 33-8 on average, 426-104. They beat one of their crossover games, Powerhouse Sandusky Perkins. That's a game that they point to every year, kind of like we do Napoleon. Division 4, beat them. I think Perkins was number 2 in Division 4, 15-14 in a great game.
Yep.
So that's a barometer for this Milan team.
Right.
They can handle that incoming. So I think they're loaded. I think their defense also they got 8 back on defense. This team is a very good football team, well coached. 24-year veteran Jim Hall brings in as good of a Milan Edison team as we've seen in modern history. And we can talk about the game, but statistically, 57 kids. I mean, they're loaded to bear. This is going to be a war.
Yep. Yeah, this is when you watch them on film, they look a lot like us. I mean,
by the way, Alex Davis, kicker, soccer player, like our Ian Rosebrook, as Spike would say, they can kick it.
Yeah,
Oak Harbor could kick it.
Right.
So you feel another field goal type game in this one.
It's going to be very tight, and they look a lot like us with double tight. They can go double tight, and they just want to smash you in the mouth, and let's see if you can stop it. But they also have the spread with the quarterback, and he can go create, and he throws a good ball. So they have that.
They can throw it deep, too.
They can.
Down the field.
He's had some big throws down the field. So I wonder how they're going to play this. If you watch them against Perkins, they double tighted it. They tried the spread, wasn't working, double tighten. They're like, let's shorten this game up, get running clock, and get it going. And then some of these other games, they went straight spread. And they didn't run it as much. So they have both options. And it's what I was surprised last week against Oak Harbor. Oak Harbor went straight spread.
A 5 wide.
I mean, they were running it early, and then they said, this isn't it.
Well, they got nothing out of Ridner.
Right.
Nothing. Basically under 10 yards. It was all Lalonde kind of running around like Fran Tarkington and throwing it around. And that was their offense, was to spread the thing out and let him pick his spots. But I think we were laying some licks on him, and the physicality of that game. I think their head coach just said, we don't need any more of this.
Yeah.
What we need to do is we need to get ourselves together and get a drive. They need to find a drive, and getting your best offensive player. A drive was important. This Edison team is deeper offensively.
Yeah.
You saw an explosive wide receiver last week that ran by Garber and
he was fast.
Ran by Cammie on command, just dropped balls. I mean, he dropped some touchdown balls last week.
Mm-hmm.
Lalonde put the ball right on his hands. He dropped balls. This group here, they want to pound you up. They got a guy, the Cy Finnan is almost like a John Riggins type. He's got that thick middle.
He's about that wide.
He's about like 38 years old. I think he likes Doritos, Mountain Dew and Doritos. But I mean, don't sleep on that. That guy can run. He's got a burst, and you can't. It's hard to get. He is physical. He's going to lean on some people.
Yes,
this is the most physical back we might see in the entire play.
Well,
a guy that wants to seek contact, and run through you, run by you. I think this is a guy that can do that.
Well, in 25. The Whitmer kid's exact same. Yeah. I mean, you
literally
you almost can't tell on film
right.
who's who until you see their numbers. They're like carbon copies of each other, and they are big, they are nasty, and they want to hit you, and they want to put their head down and almost embarrass you. I mean, there's some runs that I've seen downfield where they're just
trucking people,
just shouldering, throwing arms in big runs where they'll come into a pile. There's 4 or 5 people in. Boom, they're out and they're gone.
Well,
because they do have some breakaway speed as well.
Waylon Rentz type looking runners.
Yeah,
Waylon
very
Rentz,
similar.
I mean, Waylon does it a little bit differently.
Different physique than Waylon.
Well,
Waylon's a little bit more cut.
Waylon's got a 32-inch waist. These guys
maybe a 40,
upper 30s, but they look good doing it.
They do.
I love the old Washington Redskins. Casey Muller's a big Skins fan. I always tease him because the Steelers beat the Skins, but those Skins teams. The Hogs up front and Riggins behind that. I mean, like, what do you think you're doing? They road graded people. That's what this Edison team kind of does,
right?
With a little bit more creativity in their offense, because they will. This Hermes kid at quarterback will keep it, and he can hurt you,
right?
And then you start to fall asleep like opponents do against us. Historically, we could throw a boot pass for touchdowns. Not sure that we're there in this offense. Maybe he'll pull it out this week. This Milan Edison team can do that.
Yeah,
they can get vertical with their backs and their slots. They don't have like one, to me, I don't know what you saw. I don't see one dominant outside weapon.
No.
But they run routes and they catch footballs.
Yeah, number 3 and 2 are both adequate receivers.
Yes.
And they got decent size, good hands. I'm not scared that they're going to run by us like number 7 last week necessarily, but they've been in the offense and they're very serviceable. To get back to the quarterback, most impressive thing about him to me was his faking. I mean, he'll fake
ball
that.
Handling.
He'll fake that dive. He'll ride it all the way in there, and then he'll spit out the end, and it's like you can't even see that he's got the football. So discipline for our defense, our defensive ends, our outside linebackers, sniper is going to be key, because that will absolutely hurt us if we do not stay home.
It'll only take a couple of reads for the guys in the Edison booth to realize that we're not disciplined, or we are.
Yeah.
Now, the good thing about quarterback faking is, what you like to do, is you've got to blast quarterbacks. If you're going to fake, and you're going to carry your fakes out, good for you, good ball handling, but then there's going to be a toll to be paid.
That's right.
And number 63 loves to charge tolls. Number 51's a toll charger. So if you're going to be a faking quarterback, you need to be understanding that you're going to receive some. Rex Lindgren loved that.
He did.
If you're going to fake it, you're going to be disciplined, and that guy's going to get hit no matter what. He hands it off, he pitches it, whatever he's going to do, you're going to blast that guy. So you need to kind of bake that into the way we play option football or quarterback keep football. I think we're going to lay some licks on this quarterback, and I think it may or may not be a big part of this football game.
Yes. And I think, too, whether, we don't know what the rain is going to do, but we're talking big winds, 10, 20-mile-an-hour winds. So it could affect the downfield passing game.
If you think a 20-mile-an-hour wind with plus or minus maybe some rain, you think this turns into even more of a
that's what I'm saying.
Ground and pound?
I wouldn't be surprised if they come out double tight and say, let's see who can do it better.
Yeah, I don't mind a 10-7. I don't mind a 7-6 Jazz. We did that at Columbus Grove a generation ago. That was just fine with me.
Yeah.
I was on the sidelines for that going, I kind of like this a little bit. Because we got punting. They like to kick it. We like field position. Casey Mueller is a surgical game caller. He knows when the field gets flipped. He likes to defer. I mean, he's the standard old-school defensive coordinator head coach, and I think that's a big advantage. And not that Jim Hall is not outstanding. Jim's been there 24 years. This Edison team has been around the playoff picture a long time, and they win titles over there like it's eating Cheerios. This is a great football program, and I expect it to be an absolute war. When I think through our offense with its limitations and the things that are just, it's just you watch film and you watch us play every week. We get focused on what we really can do. But one of the things that you and I were talking about, like off mic before we got on this podcast, was that the size of their front seven isn't – linebackers are their running backs. They're big.
Yeah.
All those guys will play both ways, which I think is a story we'll tell a little bit later. But because they've got 57 kids, we have 72 kids. I think our depth and the way our guys use our depth is a huge part of our success.
Yes, it's been great.
Huge part of our success. But the way they move their defensive line, and I looked about 55 snaps, and they are difficult to keep track of.
Mm-hmm.
We like to get to the second level with guards and centers with Clayton Steele, Max Walker, Stephen Brogan, Tyler Lay, who's I think playing maybe our best player in the playoffs right
Lights
now.
out.
Tyler Lay, lights out. But when you get on a route to get to an outside backer, or a tackle gets on a route to get down on a mic inside, and then someone's in your way because he's slanting, he's moving, he's here pre-snap, moving. That's a little bit more difficult to account for. And you being a former quarterback, your pre-snap read could look completely different than your snap read. And I think that's what Edison's going to try to do, because they cannot stand toe-to-toe with Hunter Spangler, with Xander Zeiter, our guards. I mean, you don't want to stand toe-to-toe with Tyler Lay. I think Goose Gieske, you can't just grab and think you're going to win.
Right.
They're moving. And talk about the difficulty of finding where you need to be and them disrupting your routes to the second level.
Yeah, I think we talked a little bit, but it seemed like Delta back in the day when I played, they had a bunch of wrestlers inside that weren't as big, but, man, they were quick, and they were shooting gaps and creating a lot of problems. I think that's what this front three will do. So, yeah, it's going to take some time for us to kind of square that up and see what that looks like. I do think Advantage Liberty Center inside, though. I think if you look at just our size and our center to guard play, I think we would have an advantage there. Their defensive ends, I think, are probably a little bit stronger. Mm-hmm. Number 17 will double down to one of the defensive ends. He's very tough on the outside, but and then their linebackers really flow.
They do
really well. I mean, number 25 is he is nasty. He comes downhill with a mean intent, and he is all over the place. So. You're right. It's a very active front seven. It's not your Oak Harbor where they got a couple run stuffers where they just kind of want to, lock out and try to make a tackle. These guys are shooting gaps. They want to get around you more.
When you were to go to the line of scrimmage and you'd have an offensive line that were pretty stationary, but they could win. They were, like you talked about last week, 78, 71. 71 was hurt, but you look at those films, those inside like one technique type players, 3- technique players, they're immovable.
Yeah.
So it kind of shapes your game call. Well, this kind of deal, they got a bunch of Marines in there, and They are tough. I mean, they're rugged. They get to spots. They penetrate. Mm-hmm. They're half man and everything. Like they're running at a half of you. They're not taking you on because they don't have the weight. When you look at a pre-snap read and then maybe even a check with me audible, how do you account for some of that movement and are they slanting? What strength? Is it wing?
Yeah.
Is it the overload? What does that look like?
Well, sometimes you can't.
Yeah.
I mean, if you go head up, you're getting ready to snap the ball, and he's moving over into a gap. You're going to run a one, and then all of a sudden, boom, he's in the gap before pre-snap. Not a whole lot you can do there. I think the guys the coaches upstairs are going to have to be looking at tendencies, see if they can't kind of figure out what that looks like. But at the same time, that same slanting can be adverse. They can slant the wrong way,
take you out,
and we can hit one, and it could be off to the races.
That takes into consideration how good we are in the booth. The Ryan Millers, the Todd Spanglers, the Brad Howes, these guys are outstanding up there.
Yeah.
And I think the communication between the booth to the field and our guys on the field, I think coaching staff-wise, we're on point. I think that kind of is why you script some plays, and you want to see what they do against your formations, wide side, short side, wing, tight end, and you can kind of see what their game plan is in the first 6 to 8 plays, and then from there, that's why we're so good in the second half.
Yeah.
I asked Casey about that this morning, and he's corporate football, man. He's all business. There's not a lot of emotion in that locker room. I know some of that we were flame throwing sometimes, throwing water bottles and, lighting people on fire in the locker room. That's not how this locker room typically operates. It's very systematic, and you see them come out in the second half, and they've made the adjustment. So I have such a good confidence, and it's I think that Jim Hall's got a good staff, and I think Edison is really well coached when you watch them technically.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But I just feel like our guys really understand. They're so in tune with our team and what we've been able to do against guys. That's why we're winning these close games. We don't lose close games.
Right.
This staff, if it's tight, we don't lose. It's been going on now for years. Talk about, because you were, Chris Riggi, I think, was your quarterback coach, and Casey was the defensive coordinator, Rex was the OC. But talk about the importance of adjustments, your position coach, and all that communication going into trying to figure out in a kind of a chess match against your opponent. How important is that to you as a quarterback?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's all that communication's happening at halftime.
It's a huge adjustment period.
It's from coach. It was Coach Lingard, it was OC, and it was Riggi, and we were all kind of working together on, okay, this is what we saw. This is what we're going to work on the second half. They'll talk about potential audibles. If they get into this, the pop pass is there. If they get into this, look for that for a check. So that communication is key. And yeah, this coaching staff has been. I mean, look at the second halves. But for the last 3 or 4 years, we just come out in the second half, and it's just domination. So we saw it in Napoleon this year. We saw Patrick Henry when we got going in the second half.
7-6 in Napoleon, and then it wasn't the same game.
No, it wasn't. So I think our coaching staff does a fantastic job of adjustments at halftime. You see it.
And I just love when we're sitting up there going, well, we lost the toss, and here we go. Now we got to score we got to score in that first possession, and Casey was able to keep the upper hand for the bulk of that game. There were a couple big drives Oak Harbor had that became a little unnerving, but the turnovers really stopped Oak Harbor, and a couple drops I think were big. Let's talk about Milan Edison's offensive and defensive line. You've kind of addressed it a little bit, and talking to some of the guys that are in the studio about the size of this offensive line. We have seen back-to-back pretty sizable offensive line. Liberty Benton was a pretty big group.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly last week, a pretty big group of dudes. And this Edison group, because they like to run some option and they want they're more active.
Yes.
Much like their defensive line, this offensive line is very active. They're very quick off the ball. They're targeting. It's like they block out of a shoot a lot. They're not high blockers.
No.
They're drive blockers.
They look like us.
They look a lot like
in
us.
Hips. They're pulling guards.
And there's the size. Although Spangler and Giesge are anchors and big, and Xander's big. For generations, we've had this size group. Let's talk about the offensive line. Their tight end is 6'2", 185. Left tackle 6'4", 200. Their left guard is 5'9", 180. I think that's cheating. Their center is 5'9", 190. Their right guard is 5'9", 190, and then their big gigantic tackle 6'3", 195.
Yeah.
And when you watch them,
they might even look that big. No.
But man, they are very active. They get on their guys, and their feet are driving.
Yeah.
I love where they target their blocks, and I love the fact they stay on their blocks. They're athletic, and they're a bunch of wrestlers. Talk about when you watch their offensive line within the offensive structure they run. How effective are they?
Yeah, well, I think we've talked all season that when opposing teams go against Liberty Center, they can't compensate for our physicality.
Right.
So they get into the game, and we start wearing on people because they're just not used to taking that. Well, this team, they've been doing this in practice. They know what this is all about. So it's not going to take them by surprise. They're going to be ready for the physical game and for the pulling guards. They've repped against this in practice, what they're used to seeing. So, yeah, you look at them, you're like, oh, they're not that big. But then they just drive the football down the field. These guards are all over people. They're into people's hips. They're creating big holes, and they are that active is the best way to explain them, and they're very effective.
Well, last week they played Eastwood. They rushed the ball 57 times for 482 yards. This Eastwood team was 10-2.
Yeah.
This was not a 4-7
right.
Eastwood team. This was an Eastwood team that was highly respected and rolling in the playoffs, and all Edison did was take them apart bit by bit. Edison's only been in a couple dogfights. That Perkins game at 15-14 was one, and this Eastwood game only because of the explosivity of Eastwood. I think one of the things I look at too is strength of schedule. You know, our number isn't all that great at 56 or 57. That's out of 107 teams in Division 5. They're at number 31, which I think is a significant difference. Mm-hmm. I think their conference, you know, they play crossover games in that upper level. They got a Lake Division with teams like Bellevue, Clyde, Norwalk, Perkins, Sandusky, and Tiffin Columbian. The Bay Division's kind of that middle size. They got Edison and Huron and Margaretta, Port Clinton, Vermilion, good football team, and Willard. And the small school, the River Division, there's 10 of them in there. Danbury, Gibsonburg, Hopewell, Loudon, Lakota, New Regal, Old Fort. So some teams aren't great in that lower division, but that's a 22-team conference where they play a couple crossovers. Really, if you look at just the Lake and the Bay divisions, those are good football teams.
Yeah.
And they're big and strong football teams. And I think that our league wasn't that this year.
Right.
You know, when you have seasons like Swanton and Bryan and Wauseon who are completely disappointing, and Evergreen and Delta are your 2 and 3 and 4 teams in our league. When is the last time you've seen in your career those teams being so bad?
Yeah.
That does not help us.
No.
That has not helped us.
No. They're I mean, I watched the Perkins game, and I mean, Perkins it's a big football team.
Fantastic.
Physical. They got some athletes on the outside. It was a great game. I think Perkins, had a couple missed touchdowns in that football game, but Edison went toe-to-toe with them. They had some big runs. They moved the football. And Vermilion was a good football team.
They were.
And Gibsonburg had a decent schedule.
They did.
They
did.
They went out early in the playoffs. But, yeah, I think strength of schedule advantage Edison for sure. That Perkins game's interesting. Obviously, they beat them, and then you see what Perkins did in the point. It's kind of the only matchup that we really saw. I guess we see Eastwood and Oak Harbor as well. But I don't think Eastwood they weren't ready for that physicality. Clearly.
They were not ready early. I think it really shocked them. But then they settled in.
They did.
Offensively, they got some plays down the field. That's not what we do.
Right.
Eastwood got plays down the field. And
had a kickoff return.
That's huge.
That's one thing. Their kicker is good. He can hit a 30-yarder. But for whatever reason, they kick off short. I don't know what it is. They only get it down to about the 20. And I've seen some big kickoff returns against them. So that's going to be one key this week. If we could steal one, we get Cammy on a big return, or we get the ball at the 50-yard line, that could be a big change in field position in this football game.
Well, certainly, just when we started looking like we were going to take control of the game against Oak Harbor, they got one. And that game was still in the throes with the special teams play. I will say, as much as we've bragged about Brian Hefflinger and that group all year long, because it's been so good. That coverage team had some issues last week.
Yeah.
A couple plays, and not just the touchdown. There are a couple, you could see it coming a little bit, and it kind of nipped us in the rear end last week.
Yeah, I think we kind of got out of our lanes.
Lane discipline.
In our tackling. I think tackling on special teams and just on defense, I think if you could point to one thing defensively, like, man, did we tackle very well? I think there were some missed tackles in there that maybe you can say we're playing against a better team. We haven't seen these types of athletes for probably a couple weeks. But I think that's going to be a very key part of this game is tackle. Who can tackle better? Because I'm telling you right now, 25 and 17, you better bring everybody, and you better wrap up. And you better wrap up the quarterback because they can really create some problems. And same with Waylon Rentz and Garrison Cruz and Thomas Muller. If you don't tackle those guys, we're going to create a lot of problems for you. So that's going to be a big key in this game.
All three guys last week had good rushing yardage and big key yardage, all three running backs. And I think the balance we have in our backfield, I think, is a significant win. The throw that I liked last week that Grady made was that big conversion.
Huge.
To Garber. I thought Garber ran a tremendous route, ran past the sticks, came to the ball at the sticks. Big first down play by Garber there. A good throw by Grady. That was a good throw.
Across his body.
Yeah. So that was a big pickup. And then
a
little bit of we had a couple plays last week where we got a little discombobulated in the backfield.
Yeah.
Big fourth down conversion.
That was huge.
By the nose, right?
Was big play.
And we faked a punt.
Yeah. Hey, I like the aggressiveness.
I do. But that was like Casey's first in like a decade. I'm only kidding. I tease him like, you're not Mr. Fake Punt. You slid one in and it didn't work. So will you?
Well, that was Rex's deal.
Rex loved Mr. He was all about fake.
He loved that.
Cliff Height came into the Liberty Benton game. Said, "How many different fake punts do you got?" I'm like, I don't think Casey likes fake punts. He's like, we had to prepare for 44 fake punts against Rex Lindgren. So, all right, let's round this thing out. Liberty Center, Milan Edison, Lake High School. It's going to be a fantastic game. By the way, fun fact. Edison, Ohio, is the hometown of Thomas Edison.
Oh, okay.
The inventor of electricity
I know that.
and the light.
Yes.
Right? So that is significant when you think about how important in our country's history Edison, Ohio is. So it is a significant place. Been there. It's kind of a cool little town. What I will say is they play football there, and they wrestle there. That looks a little bit like us. They're a very serious football program. This is not a bunch of athletes like maybe we saw against Elmwood a couple years ago in that shootout against Perrysburg and the freezing 51-48 and that freeze down. That was a good football team, but Elmwood's not month in and month out, year to year out football team. This Milan Edison's a football team. What does Liberty Center have to get done on offense against Milan Edison, in your opinion, to get this done?
I think it's just sustained drives.
Yep. Wait. That formula. Let's talk about sustained drives.
Well, that was last week.
I mean,
and don't turn it over.
Yeah, that's it.
And I think if you watch them on film as well, the short passing game is available. They have given up some small power passes when you get a back out or a little out route. So I think that plays well into our passing game. What we want to try to do. We only had 5 passes last week.
4 was it 4?
4 or 5. So maybe that's 10 this week. I don't know. But I think that short, controlled passing game can be very effective, loosen up some of this defense, run the football, sustain drives, don't turn it over.
This podcast will be the same.
It is.
What we have to get done. What does Milan Edison have to get done on offense against Liberty Center on defense?
I think they have to hit a couple big plays. I think that's the key. I don't know that they can go toe-to-toe and just drive the football against us. But if they can hit a big one down the field, or if one of these running backs comes in and gets a big explosive play, I think that's key.
This game, to me, looks the same as last week's, minus the explosive quarterback that was quarterback run exclusive. I do think their quarterback will keep it, and he's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's an underrated thrower of the football. I think that they have the ability, just like us, run, and you keep sneaking down in a box, and you just one little slip up away, or one key read away from a big play. But I think this game is going to be won and lost in the trenches. I think it's going to be semi-inclement weather. I do think the winds will be higher. I think this game will be super short, and I think Liberty Center will come out on top. And this one could look more like 17-14.
Yeah,
because it looks. Last week I think that we got some things done on offense, but this week I think we get a little bit less done on offense because I think Edison will match our intensity, and I think Milan Edison is a legitimate. So I think Liberty Center wins this game, but this game is going to be won on the line of scrimmage.
Yep.
End of story.
Tackling, turnover, penalties, big plays. I think those are the 4 keys. Whoever makes the most of those 4 keys wins the football game.
Liberty Center, Milan Edison this week at Lake High School, 13-0. I think I sent you a Ali Frazier Thriller in Manila.
You name it.
Wait, that was Foreman. I think this was something. There was the Ali Frazier series.
Heavyweight,
center
street
stage,
fight, whatever you want to call it.
In the middle. I mean, they're not going to be. There'd be no fake. There's not a fake deal like the Tyson fight this week.
No.
This is a real fight. Ali Frazier.